MAGA, but they were very friendly.
Most of them are. I hear in California, but you have a few skinheads. We had our problems with them back in the 90s. And then up in Oregon, I lived in Salem, which my husband calls purple. And, of course, Portland is very blue, but in Salem, we're in the middle of farm country, so we're surrounded by white supremacists and Proud Boys. So you just have to, every once in a while, you'll see a pickup truck with a giant American flag rolling through town, blowing smoke. You're like, oh boy.
I used to say...
They've come in to buy supplies.
I used to say we're living in Salem back during George W. Bush's time. Now we're living in Gilead. It's just hilarious.
I really, that is what it feels like. It's nuts.
And the handmaids, they were red. So
yep.
I'm getting triggered by red. And anytime I see blue or white together, I get triggered. If you remember January 6th,
yeah,
the Christian flag is white and blue. They were there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So they were waving that around.
Interesting fact, last year Florida canceled Pride and only red, white, and blue colors could be on any bridges, pitch lights, buildings, anything. Governor DeSantis.
Yeah.
Governor DeShut.
Yep.
All he needs to do is the goose step and would be in Italy back during World War II.
Exactly. It's like, Trump is old, but he's not so old. It's just nuts that everything has been rolled back 100 years, pretty much.
Yeah, and I put something on a YouTube posting about, I think it was Texas, but it could have been Florida, one of those crazy states. The Supreme Court decided that parents can now opt out of queer history and queer literature now. They ruled in favor of it. And I made a comment about when people say we need to protect the children, my response is from Christian indoctrination or from the realities of living in a colored society.
Right.
And then I got trolled by 7 homophobes who unfortunately have kids. And they said, I'm not a homophobe because I don't want my kids to learn about this. And I said, you're so afraid of them knowing that they'll turn gay, even though that's stupid, that you won't teach them.
Yeah.
I mean, your actions say you're afraid. Because if you weren't afraid, they could read anything. And
right,
it wouldn't matter.
You let them, instead of burning books, how about reading them with your kids? So that way you know what it is they're reading and you can explain to them, what it means. And if you disagree with it, you can explain why. But hiding the reality from them doesn't help them grow up to be whole people.
Yes, and I definitely explained it pretty well on YouTube. And I said, you can call it protecting your kids. I call it erasing queer people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I'm not a homophobe. And then he called me a como. Yeah. It's slang for child groomer.
Yeah.
And I said, you really shouldn't throw stones. You take your kids to Sunday school. Who's indoctrinating who today?
Yeah. And my husband is former Navy, and he has a lot of MAGA friends from when he lived in St. Louis, and worked in, or when he worked in St. Louis, and when he lived in Chicago, went to Southern Illinois University.
St. Louis?
That was rather racist down there.
St. Louis was where the sexual revolution started, Masters and Johnson.
Yeah, but it's different.
And St. Louis, they paid Chinamen to lay the railroad all the way to California. I think that 1880s.
Uh-huh.
And then once they were done with the railroad, they created immigration control to keep out the Chinese that built the railroad.
Yep.
We're living through the 1950s again.
Yeah.
Like through the Lavender Scare, and people said, we're not living through the 1950s. And I said, Trump's mentor was Roy Cohn, and Senator McCarthy's right-hand man.
Yep.
Ironically, he died in the 80s from AIDS, and he persecuted them for 40 years.
Yeah, it's very sad.
I mean, Trump's mentor